And now, joining us with more on the growing relations between Israel and South America, please welcome former Israeli ambassador to multiple countries, Yosef Livne. Welcome.
Thank you.
So let's jump right in. How are our good relations with Brazil going to affect perhaps relations with other South American countries like, for example, Bolivia or Venezuela, with whom we don't have very good ties?
I think on the whole, the fact that Brazil is such an important country in South America, probably one of the most, if not the most important country, somehow it will reflect probably with countries that are closer on the ideological continuum. Countries that are now ruled by right-leaning governments, conservative governments, it will probably, it may have some positive effect, influence. However, Bolivia and Venezuela, of all places, I'm doubtful. Well, Venezuela is really irrelevant now as an actor. Even though the leader of the opposition has declared that when he takes over, he's going to renew relations with Israel. If that happens, then one can assume that the relations will be good again. For Bolivia, Bolivia is left-leaning. They don't have diplomatic ties with us. I don't think that the fact that Brazil is getting closer to Israel is going to have any positive influence on Bolivia.
And what about other South American countries with whom we do have relatively close ties? Do you foresee a warming of ties there?
It may. I don't think it's a must, because we do have close relations with Argentina, we have close relations with Chile. We have to distinguish between what we call bilateral relations, which is an umbrella under which you include trade relations, economic ties, maybe scientific ties, things of that sort, which have been growing steadily. And on the other hand, you have the political issues. There I am not so certain that even though we may get closer to Brazil, I don't know that it will have such an influence on the political ties between the countries as they are reflected at UN votes, for instance.
And for example, we've just seen President Bolsonaro visiting Israel, and at the end of the day, the embassy was not moved to Israel.
Oh no, because one has to be realistic. The economic ties between Brazil and the Arab world are enormous, really. We're talking about $30 billion of exports from Brazil to the Arab world. And I think that when people from the, how shall we say, the business community mentioned the numbers, I think that it played an important role in the decision not to move the embassy, but in order not to lose face or to, he decided to establish some sort of economic or official office in Jerusalem, which in itself is a positive step.
Absolutely.
I mean, if he hadn't spoken about moving the embassy, and he came out, you know, and saying, "Oh, we're going to establish an economic office in Jerusalem," I think everybody would applaud him.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, what do you think are some of the main concerns that Israel faces when it does sort of establish or strengthen ties with South American countries?
Oh no, I think all, you know, full steam ahead. Most of my career was in Latin America, and there is a bastion of goodwill towards Israel. Some of it comes from religious background, cultural background, different aspects. And I think that we can develop the ties. I think that we can deepen trade relations. We have to look for opportunities where they exist and try to push closer political ties. And even though they may not come to fruition immediately, the fact that we're there, the fact that we are relevant, after all, this is a startup nation. And for many countries, this is a very important reason to establish closer relations with Israel.
Well, great, Ambassador Livne. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you for having me.